Hello there folks, my name is Spoonks and welcome back to another episode of Box Office Chat. This is the show where I break down the top 5 domestic box office results, see where each movie landed, and see how well each movie did. So let's get started. Number 5 was Anyone But You, making $9.7 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $43 million and a worldwide total of $58 million. Anyone But You continues to be the big holiday surprise hit right now, as it is the only film in the top 5 to continue to increase from the prior weekend. This weekend it increased 11%, which is absolutely insane. Normally, the weekend after New Year's, you would expect movies to drop, but not drastically, have soft holds, but never typically to expect them having increases, as New Year's is such a big weekend for going to the movies, and obviously once New Year's is over, everyone's back to school, back to work, they don't have much time to go to the movies. So the fact that this was able to increase yet again is outstanding to see, and because of that, the film has now doubled its $25 million budget worldwide, and it is sure to do that very soon domestically, and I think it will also be able to surpass No Hard Feelings to become the second biggest R-rated comedy of 2023, with the only thing left standing in its way is Cocaine Bear, which made $64 million, and if it continues going at the pace it's going, I think it could even surpass that. The big question for this movie is how it's going to perform this weekend, not only just because the fact that Martin Luther King Jr. Day is next Monday, so a 4-day weekend, I apologize, but also there is a very big new wide release hitting theaters this weekend that could potentially steal a lot of this movie's audience, so it's really gonna have to depend on how this movie fares against that film. It's definitely gonna be interesting to see how both of those movies perform this weekend, but more on the new film later. As for right now, Anyone But You is a huge surprise hit right now. Definitely wasn't expecting this to steal all of the sleeper surprise holiday numbers from some of the other bigger tentpoles, but hey, you know, it's always nice to see one of these big surprises, and I'm very happy to see this movie surprising at the box office. Hopefully it can continue to improve, hopefully it can continue to be on this track, as right now, yeah, this is already a major success already. Number 4 was Migration, making $9.9 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $77 million and a worldwide total of $151 million. So naturally, Migration did take a hit this weekend. It was expected, you know. Kids are no longer on winter break, they're heading back to school, meaning they don't have as much time to go to the movies. But still though, this movie is still doing rather well for itself. Even though it did take a hit, it only fell 41% from last weekend, which is still a pretty solid hold given everything. And because of this, it was able to surpass its initial budget of $72 million and double that budget worldwide, which, given how things started for the film, I think Illumination is very happy to see. Its audience is growing, not to the degree as some other animated movies like Puss in Boots did last Christmas, but this is still a pretty solid total given the fact that it's an original animated movie, and those are definitely harder to sell nowadays than your big franchise animated movies. So the fact that this movie is able to bring in these types of numbers is still rather exceptional. What's interesting to me though is that internationally it seems to be on par with the domestic numbers, and it still has a couple places to release, so hopefully when it releases in those places, like I know South Korea is like this week or next week, but the UK and Japan are like in February, so hopefully those numbers help really bring a significant boost to this movie. But yeah, you know, still it's doing pretty well for itself. Again, not a Puss in Boots level hit, but if it could continue with the strong word of mouth and the fact that it's the only animated movie released until March with Kung Fu Panda 4, you know, outside of the Pixar re-releases, then I think it'll be fine. Probably it'll end up around Elemental and Secret Life of Pets 2, which, given the type of movie this is, I think would be rather solid. Number 3 was Aquaman and the Lost Kingdom, making $10 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $100 million and a worldwide total of $334 million. So even Aquaman right now seems to be performing better than expected. Not doing great, it's still lagging behind, significantly behind the first Aquaman. And with that $205 million budget, these are the best numbers. But it is fascinating to see this movie still holding pretty well, still making some pretty sizable amounts of cash, and becoming one of the better DC films performing recently. It's about to surpass The Flash's entire domestic run. It's already surpassed most of the DC films. Hell, it even surpassed the Marvels recently. And it seems to end up as the third biggest superhero, well, fourth biggest superhero movie of the year, which, given the expectations going into this and the noticeable lack of big marketing for it, you would have thought otherwise. But no, it seems people are still trying to check this movie out despite everything. So yeah, once again, Aquaman is still performing better than expected. It's not the total colossal dumpster fire we all expected it to perform as. Still not great numbers, but then again, it could have been a lot worse. Number 2 was Night Swim, opening with $11 million this weekend domestically and $17 million worldwide. Of course, with this being the first new wide release of the year, this has already broken so many records for 2024. Obviously, it's the biggest movie of the year, biggest opening of the year, and the biggest horror movie / opening for a horror movie this year. Hooray, hurrah for Night Swim, congratulations. But I don't think it's going to keep a lot of these records for a while, as this isn't the best opening, I think. This is not a terrible opening by any means. This is still a Blumhouse movie, so it didn't cost all that much to make. It only cost $15 million to make. It's shortly gonna double that budget very soon, but I think they were pretty disappointed by these numbers still, given how successful horror movies did last year, and I'm sure they were wanting for this movie to continue that trend of how successful horror has been, and for this movie to open not that great, significantly under Megan from last year, is probably a bit upsetting. I just don't think the premise for this movie was all that intriguing to entice general or horror audiences. Just, it's a haunted pool. Ooh. And it just really didn't interest people. But to make matters worse, those who did go and see it did not like it. It got a C on CinemaScore, which is actually lower than the likes of Insidious 2, Evil Dead Rise, Exorcist Believer, and The Nun 2. So that's definitely concerning. I don't think the word of mouth on this movie is going to be all that great. In fact, I'm expecting a pretty significant drop off next weekend for this movie. Maybe not to like catastrophic levels, but certainly something pretty big, maybe in the 60% range. So yeah, not expecting a lot of great legs for this movie either, especially with a pretty big movie coming out this weekend. So yeah, despite starting off pretty okay for its budget, things do not look pretty good for Night Swim, sadly. And finally, let's end the video off with the number 1 movie of the weekend, which was once again Wonka, making $14 million this weekend, adding to a domestic total of $164 million and a worldwide total of $467 million. So Wonka continues to dominate. It has now officially surpassed the $150 million milestone domestically, $450 million worldwide. It is definitely going to get to $500 million worldwide, probably by next week. And in terms of the domestic side of things, while I don't think it's going to cross $200 million by next week, I think that's pretty secure in the long run. We'll hopefully see it surpass that milestone while it's in the top 5. There's not much coming out apart from this weekend. Again, more on that later. But I also do think that the movie will inevitably crack the top 10 biggest films of 2023. It will surpass Taylor Swift and Sound of Freedom, and maybe even John Wick Chapter 4, given how much further this movie can go. But once again, given how slow everything is right now, I can definitely see that happening. Wonka has just captured the hearts of millions and is certainly the win Warner Brothers really needed right now, as their other 2 holiday releases didn't really make a big splash. Aquaman is doing better than expected, but still not really bringing the money it needs for the budget, and The Color Purple has been fading fast since Christmas Day. So at the very least, they have Willy Wonka. Willy Wonka has gotten their back, and boy, has it delivered thus far. We'll see how much further this movie can go, but once again, things are still looking very nice from Wonka. And those were your top 5 domestic box office results for this weekend, but we're not quite done yet, as we've got another week ahead of us and new movies hitting theaters. And while we do have a wide slew of releases this weekend, from the re-release of Soul to the Book of Clarence to the Beekeeper, and while I'm certain at least one of those movies will make an impact on the top 5, none of them are going to make as big of an impact as Mean Girls. This is the feature-length adaptation of the Broadway musical, which was in turn based off of the beloved and acclaimed teen comedy of the same name. Also, yes, this movie is a musical. Now, while Night Swim was the first movie of the year, I think this is going to be the first big movie of the year. Mean Girls is one of the most celebrated and beloved films ever. The impact that movie had on pop culture has been legendary. Everyone knows everything about this movie. Even if you haven't seen it, you've heard the quotes, the characters, the jokes, everything about this movie. And since this movie is in any way related to that film, is definitely drumming up buzz. Speaking of the buzz, I've been seeing a lot of buzz about this movie, a lot of people talking about it, getting excited or interested at the least on seeing this new iteration of Mean Girls. The marketing has also been fantastic. I've been seeing a lot of promos and marketing and ads for this movie as well. And given the lack of competition right now, we are certainly in a dry spell. Nothing really major is coming out until February, with maybe Argyle and Bob Marley, but then nothing really pops off until March, So this movie definitely has all of this time to itself, pretty much. The downsides, though, is the fact that it's the third musical in about a month, with the other two being The Color Purple and Wonka, of course. So we'll see if audiences are suffering from musical fatigue. But also, since Mean Girls is as beloved and acclaimed as it is, if this movie does not meet the high expectations, then I think this movie could be in trouble. Because, again, some people have Mean Girls as their favorite film ever made. People hold that film to such a high degree, and for good reasons. It's a great movie. So if this movie doesn't even come close to that, I am worried about the film's legs and word of mouth. But we'll see how well this movie truly does, as well as the rest of the movies that land in the top 5 on the next Box Office Chat. And that's going to do it for this week's episode of Box Office Chat. What did you all think of the results? Were you satisfied? Unsatisfied? Comment down below and let me know. If you like this video, hit the like button. If you like this channel, hit the subscribe button. Follow me on all those social media links right there. And until next time, everyone, stay sharp.